This course is the Foundations of Incident Management. What we're going to talk about in this course is really the basic understanding of what the processes are to perform the detection, analysis, and response to computer security incidents. You might call them cyber incidents, you might call them information security incidents. We're really going to take a high-level look at all the different parts of the process, what it really requires to do incident management, what type of considerations that you have to take into account, and how you might need to break out those functions, and specifically who else in your organization or constituency, and constituency is who you provide actual service to. So constituency can be internal to an organization, but it can also be external to an organization. So we're going to take a look at all those different things at a very high level. We're not going to focus today on any type of specific tools that you would use to perform these activities, but because of the fact that we're looking at the overall high-level process, you can apply this process no matter what tools or organizational structure you have at your organization itself. Now, we will mention various types of tools. We may then mention examples of tools, but as I said, we're not going to actually use those tools in any type of exercise. We're really focused on understanding what you need at the process level, what the true foundations of incident management require as far as coordination across an organization, and the types of equipment, the types of resources that you might need to be able to perform those functions. So this truly is the foundations of incident management. It's truly a look at the basics required that you can perform these functions in an efficient and robust manner. So let's get started. What we really have as our course goal is to define the purpose and the nature of incident management and its role as far as how it fits into the overall information assurance and security ecosystem. It's not all information security, but it ties in. It's an important process within information security. We'll talk about that. As I've mentioned before, we'll review the various processes, and we'll also take a look at some definitions, try to have some common explanation of some of the terms that we use in the course too. And what we want to make sure of is that at the end of the course, you should be able to explain that role, to explain what is incident management and how it might apply to your organization. But also, we'll talk about some of the terms. I mentioned that we'll say what definitions are. So we want to help you be able to distinguish between incident management and incident handling. Those are terms we hear very often. We'll take a look at the process flow for the incident handling life cycle. And as I mentioned, we'll look at some of the key preparations. What do you have to have in place already before you begin to handle an incident? Because that's where we see the true maturity and robustness of an incident management capability come into play. That you are prepared, that you have the right people, that you have the right equipment, but also that you have the right interfaces with the rest of the organization to gather the information that's needed, to perform different types of analysis, to actually come up with a response and recovery plan, and then to make the assignments of who actually is going to perform the various steps and tasks in the response and who's responsible for the recovery. We want to look at that holistic picture of incident management. We will talk about the detection side of things. We will talk about a part of detection that says situational awareness. This is really understanding what else is going around outside of your environment, within your environment. So it's going to take a look at not just your network itself and what activity might be happening, but what's happening politically, economically, socially, in maybe the city around you, in the sector around you, because those types of things, having an awareness of them, may also help you understand, detect, and be better prepared for types of computer security incidents that you might see or might have to handle. We'll also take a look at analysis, and there are many different types of analysis. There is everything from malware analysis to digital media analysis, regular media analysis, vulnerability analysis. We'll talk about those things, the differences, and how they tie in and interface with incident management. We'll also talk about the first step in analysis, which is triage, which is really taking a look at what's coming in and prioritizing, categorizing, and assigning things in a rapid manner to ensure that those priority and urgent matters are handled quickly and responsibly. And we'll take a look at what are the various steps in response. And as part of response, you may have to share information. You may have to let people who have been victims of an incident understand what they need to do to contain that incident, to recover from that incident. You may need to publish information to a broader organization, or you may need to share indicators of the activity, the malicious activity that's been seen with others in your sector, with others in your similar types of organizations, or with others just in the general public. So we'll talk about information sharing and the challenges people are facing today and the types of standardization that they're trying to do to be able to share information in a well-understood manner. Now, this particular course, I said, is called Foundations of Incident Management. And who the course is geared to really are staff in an organization who want to understand what is incident management and how can I perform it well. And we're also looking, though, at staff who want to benchmark their existing incident management processes. So it could be staff who are looking to build or enhance their incident management processes. It can be ones who want to benchmark their incident management processes. And it could be people who don't have an understanding of what incident management and incident handling really are and want to get a better overview of it so that they can see what they need to do, their role, maybe they're a new incident handler, or how they fit into their organization, or maybe an organization wants to start an incident handling capability or an incident management capability. There may be others in the organization who want to understand the incident management function so that they would be able to see how they need to interface with the incident management capability. So that could be people in the information technology area of an organization. Usually the incident management capability is outside of the IT or information technology area, but IT may be the group that's actually performing the recovery, may be out in the field that is actually updating systems that have been affected by malicious activity, maybe putting into place the controls on the various equipment pieces at the border of an organization, installing and maintaining security tools. It might also be legal staff that have to ensure that there's no liabilities that are occurring for the organization when an incident has occurred. Are there any customers that are affected? Are there specific steps that have to be taken? So there's others in the organization. We'll spend a lot of time talking about that to understand who do you interface with, how does that interface need to work. But if you're in a different part of the organization, you can use this course to get that better, higher level overview of what incident management really is. But the one thing that we always say is that you can apply these course materials as best fits your own organization and that organization's culture, policies, regulations, mandates. Because every organization is different. And therefore, we're not trying to say you have to do it this way. We're trying to say, here's what we've seen as far as good practices in performing incident management. But take from the materials covered those pieces that fit your environment. You have to understand and always follow your own roles, responsibilities, your organizational structure, your hierarchy for decision making. We may suggest things that you can take back to your management and say, maybe here's a suggestion for an improvement we can do. But we're not trying to tell you that you have to do it this way. So we wanted to point that out as far as applying the course materials. Also, a lot of the examples and a lot of the discussion and stories that we'll talk about are based on real experiences that we or others have had in the information security arena, observations that we've seen in organizations where we've done evaluations or where we've done assistance in building capabilities and where we've seen best practices work, and also problems and pitfalls that we've seen various organizations or even teams encounter, and how we want to ensure that you have a heads up and don't have to deal with the same problems, or at least have some recommendations for how you might deal with those problems. To start off, though, we talked about the fact that we will mention some terminology. And one of the things that is important for your organization is to have a standard set of definitions related to incident management. And this comes down specifically to what is your definition for events and for incidents, because those definitions can be very different across organizations. And that's why often it's very difficult to share information between organizations, because the definitions are different. So we have to understand that there are many different events that are happening. And an event can be any type of activity that happens within your organization. When we talk about computer security events, what we're really talking about are things that happen on a system or in a network related to the security of that network, whether it's integrity, confidentiality, or availability of data and resources in that infrastructure. And when we look at events, that can be things that are happening on those systems and network, but we don't know if they're malicious or not. They could be very suspicious, and we have to investigate them to try to determine, is something going on that could damage our infrastructure? Is this something that we have to respond to? We have to keep in mind, though, that system and network events are not the only things that are happening around us. And we have to understand that events can be a broad category. There can be things that people do, so there can be personal or behavioral activities. There can be physical security events, so someone trying to get into an unauthorized area to get access to protected equipment, maybe that has sensitive data on it. And also it could be spillage of information, as far as information disclosure events where there's some type of unauthorized disclosure, whether it's purposeful or accidental, of any type of sensitive information, whether it's personal, financial, health-related. So looking at personally identifiable information or PII, those are also specific types of events. There can even be criminal activity, someone trying to perpetrate a crime, possibly something like fraud or sabotage or theft of intellectual property. So we have to be aware that there are many different types of events. And how do they impact your incident management processes too? But we just wanted to point out that there are different types of events. But really, for this course, we're going to focus on events that happen on systems and networks that are, as I said, relevant to its security. So once you take a look at and analyze events, which we'll talk about in more depth, you have to determine if it hits your threshold for becoming an incident, and then what do you need to do to actually handle that incident. So we move on to the definition of computer security incidents, and many organizations have many different types of definitions that they use. The important thing within your own organization is to ensure that you've got a standard definition, a standard criteria, and a standard set of threshold for when you say these events have now become an incident that we need to do something about. So on this slide, we have some examples that people have used for definitions of security incidents. Real or suspected adverse events. in relation to the security of the systems, violating an explicit or implied security policy. So you start to get into, is it just when someone does something malicious, does it have to be just a criminal activity? Or can it also be violation of a security policy that your organization has? And what we found is, as you have a broader definition of what the incident means, it can take into account a potential threat, a threat that's ongoing, and it can be not just a threat of your computer security policies, but other type of acceptable use policies, even the violation of standard security practices. So you have to be very careful defining what your definition is of an incident. These are just some examples, and you can certainly use these to build your own. But the important point from this slide is that your organization needs a standard definition of what it means by a security incident or computer security incident. We also wanted to mention that there's an effort that's going on within the FIRST community, which is the Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams. And that organization is a unique organization that actually it pulls together those in the information security and incident response or incident management community. And many different groups and many different security teams are part of FIRST. And there is an effort going on now to define the types of services associated with security incident response. And that's really security incident management, too. We'll kind of talk more about those definitions as we move forward. So we wanted to make you aware of this activity that's going on and to take a look at the initial framework that's been developed by a multidisciplinary team from across many different members from the FIRST community. And it breaks down into incident management as a service, analysis, even though analysis is part of incident management, because there are so many different types of analysis, such as malicious code, artifact, media, vulnerability analysis, that analysis was pulled out and made its own service area. The general information assurance that takes a look at risk and compliance assessments, vulnerability and patch management, in even business continuity and disaster recovery. That comes under information assurance. The next service, situational awareness, which looks at not only sensor and metric operation, but also fusion and correlation analysis too. The next service area is outreach and communications. That looks at the types of policies that have to be in place as far as communications and outreach. It also looks at relationship management as far as how do you work with your constituency, how do you work with others, internal and external to your organization, to perform incident management functions, what type of basic security awareness is done as far as getting information out to the constituency about threats that are out there or sharing information with others in your sector. And information sharing and publications also falls under outreach and communication. The next service is capability building, and that's really looking at not only training and education, but also helping build capacity within an organization's infrastructure, helping them build the right type of security defenses in place. So that's another type of capacity building. It's looking at developing the skills of people within the security incident response area, but also it's looking at building the infrastructure to do the protection and defense activities. The last is research and development, and that says let's take a look at and research new techniques that are out there to perform the rest of these functions, or let's do research and create new techniques to perform the rest of these functions. So we wanted to point out the Security Incident Response Services framework. A lot of what we'll talk about in the Foundations of Incident Management will hit on many of these service areas, particularly incident management, the analysis function, situational awareness, and maybe a little bit about outreach and communications and capacity building, but not as much. We'll mainly be focused on the incident management analysis and situational awareness. All of those things tie into information assurance, so we will look at and we'll talk about those tie-ins too throughout the course. The rest of the course we'll take a look at then these different components and processes in incident management itself. And so we'll take a more in-depth look at defining what truly incident management is. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about current trends in threats and malicious activity that's being seen. And then we'll take a good look at the incident handling life cycle. We'll take a look at the types of things that should be in place so that you're prepared to perform incident handling. We'll take a look at the beginning when something happens and you're trying to determine if it's an incident, the type of critical information that you want to collect, the type of evidence you want to collect. We'll take a look also at what types of defensive monitoring that you need to do to detect anomalies in your network or other strange things that might impact your operations and cause a computer security incident. We'll look at the importance of situational awareness and define that and talk about how it's more than just sensors in your network. We'll take a look at the types of incident or the types of analysis that can be performed, but we'll really focus on incident analysis and triage. We're not going to spend time in this course teaching about malware analysis or media and digital media analysis. We're really going to focus on incident analysis. And then what has to be done to perform a response and then coordinate that response within and external to your organization. And then how that ties into information sharing, some of the issues in information sharing, and how information sharing initiatives are trying to improve the methods that people use to share information in a timely, actionable manner. So that is the focus for the rest of this course.